funding or venture capital are the building blocks that allow you the time and the resources and funding to actually spend time looking for what the solution is, building the tech, hiring a team in order to get to that point where you can start then being profitable and actually return whatever the investor invested. They expect to get that money to grow exponentially. The bank is just saying, we need about 10% back, year on year for this interest. Whereas VC is like, if you're not 10xing the money I'm giving you, that's not a venture backable business.
Okay, I switched. All right.
Cool, that looks better.
Yeah. How did you get into, what started first? Was that venture capital or technology for you?
Interestingly, probably neither. So for me, my career started more on the marketing side and business development side. And I'm a bit of a generalist when it comes to, I guess, things that I'm interested in. So I've always been then interested in like social media, digital marketing. And naturally, I think tech for me has been a how we deliver something or how we solve a problem, more so than the main thing that I was actually passionate about.
Okay. I think a lot of people have an idea of what marketing is, of what technology is, but when it comes to venture capital, it's a little bit confusing. How would you describe it in your own words, basically?
So very simply, venture capital is the money that's used to be the engine to start something and solve a new problem in the world. So when we think of a startup, it's very different to just your traditional business. So a traditional business would be like, I have a cup and I'd like to sell this cup, for example, and I'm going to put an X amount of profit on. I know that a lot of people use cups and I maybe ship it to different like countries. And it's kind of like a problem that's been solved already. We know people drink coffee out of a cup, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to venture capital, what we're trying to do is we're trying to solve a problem that hasn't been solved yet. There's not a solution. There's a problem that's existing. So in my case, the problem that I'm looking to solve is that women spend 25% more time in ill health than men do, which means they're sick more of the time because there's not enough solutions that adequately address women's health, and they're not looking after themselves in the right way. Because for the first time in, 50 years, women are now in leadership positions while they're raising kids. So the responsibilities are staying the same. So venture capital is really there to say, okay, we need to solve a very innovative solution here for a problem that we're not really sure how it's going to work yet. So in a startup, you really need some capital usually to get started. Typically, the founder will either bootstrap based on their earnings previously, their savings, their life savings, or they actually go to a venture capital fund or a VC or an angel investor, like a very wealthy individual who then provides the funding in order for them to go full time and actually start trying to solve the problem. So it's a very different journey compared to just starting like a normal business, because you actually are not sure if it's going to work. It's a lot more high risk than a traditional business would be. And you're trying to create something brand new and find this thing that people call product market fit, which then, people buy this cup. This is what they use. I can now scale and sell that one product. So venture capital, I would say, like in my own words, is really about that innovative problem solving, unclear, murky waters of trying to create and bring some new solution to the world and solve the world's biggest problems with new businesses.
Okay. So basically, if you're starting a startup, let's say you're starting a startup for the first time, theoretically it's almost the same as a business, so to speak. But now, would you go to a venture capitalist? That would be the person that would give you the capital to start your startup, right? Sort of, basically.
So if you were doing like a normal business, say we're talking about the cup, you'd probably go to the bank and you'd say, here's my business plan. Can I get like X amount of money, kind of a thing? With venture capital, it's very different because people invest in people. So when people look at me as the founder or they look at founding teams, they're saying, we've got no idea if this theory of what she wants to build is going to work. We believe that she has got the key ingredients to be a successful founder. So she's got the ambition, she's got the resilience, she's got the grit that if something doesn't work, she's going to get up and try again. You in the very early stages, you're really investing in people to say,
I believe that someone is passionate enough about whatever problem space. So in my case, it's women's health. I believe that she's passionate enough to stay the course and wait until that product market fit. She's not going to give up. And then ultimately what you sell usually is like equity in your business. So you say, okay, I own 100% of my business. Mr. Investor, can I offer you like 10% or 5% of my business for the first check? So typically you don't need to give that money back in the very early days. They might decide to get the money back once you're in a more positive financial space or once you raise more funding, which they call an exit opportunity out of the business. But a lot of the time, I would say now in 2024, investors are staying the course. It takes like 10 years sometimes for a business to become very profitable into a healthy financial situation, and funding or venture capital are the building blocks that allow you the time and the resources and funding to actually spend time looking for what the solution is, building the tech, hiring a team in order to get to that point where you can start then being profitable and actually return whatever the investor invested. They expect to get that money to grow exponentially. The bank is just saying, we need about 10% back, year on year for this interest. Whereas VC is like, if you're not 10xing the money I'm giving you, that's not a venture backable business. So you start to see these very clear differences between your traditional business, which is equally as important and as valuable and as hard and as amazing. But there's a difference between doing a startup, doing something innovative that hasn't been done before, and the roadmap looks very different when it comes to the way that you would fund both different businesses.
Got it. So basically, if I'm a startup creator, would I sort of go to anybody that has the capital, and would they need to be an actual VC, or can I go to anybody and try and sell them my idea, and that person then becomes a venture capitalist?
So you could go to anyone, to be honest. Venture capital is open to anybody. I think that's the beautiful thing about it. So in the early days, a VC, so an actual like venture capital fund or a limited partner fund. So think of your big ones, the Sequoia Capital, for example. They are expecting those 10x returns. They're expecting the founder to have proven a lot of the uncertainties, and they're only investing in like the top % of the world, which means the barrier to getting funding from those sources is a lot higher. So in your early days, we can look at myself, for example. I worked at a venture builder or a venture studio for 2 years. Through creating a relationship with that venture partner, they have venture capital and they are my first investors. You can also look at someone you call a business angel. So a business angel could be anyone who's a high net worth individual. They could have been a founder in the past where they made an exit and made their millions there. And what they basically do is they write checks in the very early days to other founders. And, you would find that your top CEOs of the Vodacoms and all of that, they diversify their portfolios also doing like venture capital investment. And I think that's the really cool part actually about venture investing, is that once you have a niche that you as the investor are looking at, you can write these checks and help founders in these very early stage startups where they just need a little bit of capital to help with validation, help with product, interviewing customers. It doesn't take a lot in the early days just to be able to go full time and start working on solving an idea, right? So yeah. I think it's actually quite amazing how many people could be part of this industry if they wanted to. But the one caveat is, of course, it's very high risk. When you are an angel investor, you're investing in multiple different ventures and you're hoping that one of them are going to give you that 10x return. Yeah. But if they don't, you lose that money. So it's a very, very risky investment, which is why someone like a bank, they're going to expect you to return. They're not going to say, well, Anna, it didn't work out. That's okay. I own 10% of the business and it's not worth anything anymore. They're going to say, you still need to pay me for the 100% money that you took. So it's a very different relationship, I think, of how capital is injected into businesses and the relationship you have as a founder with that source of funding.
Yeah, nice. Okay, I want to use your story, for example. Like, I noticed that with a lot of young people, starting a startup is sort of like the thing nowadays, So it's like the main thing of a startup is you need to find a problem first and then try and solve that problem. But then most of the time, the problem that you might be trying to solve has been solved already, So trying trying to find a problem is not necessarily as easy as it sounds, right? So if we use your startup, KLEO Health, right? How did you identify sort of like a gap in the industry, and you banked on that idea as being worthy of your pursuit, so to speak?
I love this question because I feel that no one talks about this very blurry early stage of starting a business. So for me, I was in corporate for 10 years. I did not expect to even go into the venture industry. I worked then for a venture builder for 2 years. And while I was there, I realized that I had the drive, the interest to do something as hard as starting a venture. So I was like, I feel I would make a great founder, and I knew I was curating those qualities in myself of resilience, of being deeply interested in certain problems. But I was never confident enough to actually leave full-time employment without knowing what that idea was, right? And a lot of founders, they speak about this. I had a very personal problem, and it hit me in the face the one day, and I was like, I need to solve this for other people. And I realized it was this massive market, and that's what I'm solving. So I took a very different journey to find my problem, actually. And I think this is quite helpful to a lot of people who might be in that weird space and they're not experiencing a problem in their day to day. So I actually started ideating. So I started being mentored by one of the co-founders of the Delta, Alex Matthews and Louis Bass. And we basically started meeting every 2 weeks. And I started chatting about the things that I'm passionate about, the problems I'm passionate about. And initially, the big problem that I knew I was interested in was women and helping women feel empowered. So for me, in short, I'm a gender-based violence survivor. So I had an ex-boyfriend who beat me up really badly. And I've since gotten a permanent protection order against him, and he was found guilty in the criminal courts. We can chat about that more later. But the context is important because I had something happen to me that was like, I don't want women to ever feel disempowered in their body. And I had a transformative experience of using my voice to be able to speak up against gender-based violence, to stand up against abuse, and to, fight for my rights in South Africa. So going through this 4-year journey kind of set me up to say, okay, I know what I'm passionate about, but I now need to take the next step and where do I go? So I started looking at all these different buckets regarding gender-based violence. I started interviewing people that had businesses that supported, survivors of gender-based violence, etc. And I spoke to a lot of NGOs, and I had a bit of an idea of what I wanted to build. And as I went down the path, I actually hit a bit of a wall because I realized that gender-based violence in South Africa or globally, it is a massive problem, but it's not a problem that you can solve quite easily. It's a complicated problem. And I couldn't really introduce a solution that wasn't going to need more and more funding like an NGO would, right? So from a profitability perspective and from building a business for me, which is obviously also a goal, I needed the passion to align with actually building something that was a sustainable business that was going to be venture backable. And those things were not meeting. So then I realized, okay, it's actually not about building a venture that is for gender-based violence survivors. It's about women's empowerment. So I had to do a little bit of a pivot already and say, whatever I do in gender-based violence, that's going to be a passion project. That's when I, make the big bucks. Hopefully I'll have the funds to do, the nonprofit things. But I still hadn't found what I wanted to do for my business. So then I started, doing some more ideating. So this is basically thinking deeply about what I really care about, starting to investigate anything that interests me. And that's when femtech became something that I was really interested in. And femtech is essentially feminine health or digital health technologies that work to solve problems that affect women more than they affect men. So, for example, like a period tracking app, for example, of women getting to know their bodies is a way to think about femtech. It's under the umbrella of health tech, but it's just more like, let's put women first to kind of close the gender health gap. Because remember, I said women spend more time in ill health than men. Because in the past, this women's health gap essentially has meant that women they realize their diagnoses much later, or they are diagnosed by doctors way later, like 5 years later, because our needs haven't been addressed in the market for so many years. We went understudied in the past. So there were quite a few things that added to this women's health gap. So to me, I then realized, okay, femtech really gets me excited because I care about women. I want women to feel empowered in their body. So it might not be in the same way when we look at gender-based violence, but from a passion perspective, it aligns very, very closely to what I really care about. And it's a massive market opportunity because women have fallen behind in managing their health and learning about their bodies. There's all these incredible gaps in the market that mean right now is the perfect time to actually start something that is focused on women's health. And that is essentially how I then focused down into this area. So it's been quite a creative process for me and quite a deep research process and self-discovery process of finding passion, but you also need to care about commercials, right? And those things need to come together in order to found something that you really care about, but that you really believe can then be that venture backable business.
Nice. I keep seeing this recurring theme that whenever, someone dedicates their sort of life to a specific startup, it's linked to their sort of passion or something they personally experience, so I think that sort of gives the boost to the startup to actually work, because I think starting something is extremely difficult, and if you don't have a sort of innate passion within yourself, it might be a bit difficult in the long run to stick to that thing. What would you say, apart from this, we have the problem, and we're trying to find a solution for it, that's why we create the startup, let's say. What are 2 or 3 other things that you think are very important, especially at the very inception of the startup phase?
So for me, I think you've got to be, as a woman who is in the, say, she's working, for me, it was very important to maintain my stability. So when you're looking at now going out of your corporate job, your comfortable salary, you're used to a certain lifestyle, you've got to plan for this in advance. So I only left full-time employment now, so let's say August. However, I started planning this 7-8 months ago. So I started saving. I was working on the weekends. I was working after hours. I had to put in that proper time and commit to myself. And I think when you are looking at doing something like a startup and it's your first one, you need to really put that time aside while you are fully employed. You need to think about stability and stress, because when a founder goes full time, you're no longer earning a salary. So you need to really be focused on, can I do this without panicking and having to go back to get a salary? Or what is my plan and how I'm going to sustain myself over the next year while I figure out what the business is, what the product is, etc. So I think the first thing for me is just make sure you really focus on keeping your stress levels down in relation to finances, because it could cause you unnecessary stress where you end up not really focusing on the business because you're just so worried about finances. So your head's got to be in the right space to commit to this, venture, and then finances have to be in the right space that you feel you can focus well on the business. The second thing I would say is mentorship. So for me, I have this amazing relationship with the Delta, and the mentorship I received or sought out was pivotal for me to be able to actually start working on the business using the right framework. I worked at a venture builder for 2 years, of course, so I have a lot of skills that I think are an unfair advantage in starting a business. I know where the common pitfalls are, but, advice I would have for someone is to really think about what knowledge do you have around you, who's done this before, who's proven that they know how to do this, and who can you lean on for advice? Because everyone will tell you founding a new startup is very lonely. It's a very confusing roller coaster of emotions. One day you feel like you found the solution. One day you think you found the problem. The next you figure out, I need to do a pivot again. So it's you feel like a little bouncy ball in a room jumping all over the show. It's very creative for an individual to go through. So you really need guardrails of advisory where there's someone that you can learn from and bounce ideas off of that isn't as close to the problem as you are and can give you some really good advice. So I think mentorship would definitely be the next one. And then I think the third thing
is probably, consider what a co-founder looks like. So I'm a solo founder at this point in time. I don't know if that's something that is going to change or not, but a co-founder relationship is almost like finding your marriage partner. You're going to be working on this business with them every single day. And in order to choose the right co-founder, it's not just about both being passionate about the problem you're solving. It's about what skills do they bring to the table that are going to complement your weaknesses. So for me, I know I'm strong in sales, in partnerships, marketing, digital side of things. I have a bit of product experience. I understand venture building. For me, if I need to consider bringing someone else on where you give up 50% or 20% of your business, or even multiple co-founders, what are they bringing to the venture and what are they balancing out? Because you can't have too much of the same thing, because then you leave a very big gap in your business. So if you are going to be giving up that equity, it's a very expensive price to pay. Make sure that person that you're bringing in is someone that really is going to be the next level up for your business, and take that relationship and that selection very seriously, because otherwise it can become quite a distraction and there can be a lot of conflict if you end up getting into business with the wrong person, and then there's a bit of a breakup or there's day-to-day conflict, which can be very distracting, when actually you should just be focusing on the business, of course, and building something and staying focused on the roadmap.
Being a solo founder, I think, especially like you, tech was not the main thing that you focused on. So obviously, if you in tech, you need to build stuff and create apps, for instance, and stuff like that. So you kind of need people, or you need skills. And what would you say? Do you think the best way is to pay someone to do the things that you can't do, or to find sort of like a co-founder, like you said? Or what other ways do you think? Because people are sort of like the most valuable commodity in any startup that you're trying to do. How would you incentivize people to get on board with your idea at the early stages?
So I think when it comes to finding the right people, if you don't ask, you don't get, number one. And I think we're often very afraid to ask for advice, to ask for, mentorship, to ask for help, to ask for guidance. And I think being a solo founder, you have to be very resourceful. You have to be aware of your limitations and, put a plan in place. So, for example, for me, it's been a very interesting journey, because obviously I got my first investor via my relationship of working in a venture studio, which meant there was a lot of trust and belief in myself as a person and as a founder. If you don't have that, fear not, because I just connected with people on LinkedIn, and then that's how I found my next mentor. So the next mentor I found was an angel investor, and he has previously launched and exited a health tech company in the UK, and he now does a lot of digital health solutions in South Africa. We connected on LinkedIn. We had a little Google Meets call, and he was like, I really like what you're doing. I'm actually building a product for founders, and we're doing a trade exchange. So in exchange for him giving me advice on every 2 weeks, we meet and he gives me advice on what I'm doing, I am giving him advice on the product he would like to build for founders who are in their early stages. A few weeks later, I then met a UX researcher who's actually helping me now with customer interviews. And for us, it's a trade exchange again. She's interested in learning about startup life because she's in a corporate, and she maybe wants to start her own venture, but she's never had that venture studio experience. So she's not really sure, what it's like. She wants to learn some frameworks. And so I'm kind of giving her that mentorship and education, and she's running these customer interviews for me. So I think you've got to be really resourceful, and, if you've got to ask and put it out there and say, what do you think of this idea? Are you willing to trade skills, or, I'll give you this if you give me that. Not everything is a monetary exchange, I think, number one. And the other thing is that you will be amazed what I have taught myself in the last 7 months. So I was never on the product side. Like I said, I was in sales, partnerships. I might be tech savvy, but I'm not a product expert or a product owner. And I'd never built anything low code, etc. So some examples, I used an AI tool called Framer to build my website. I learned how to use MailChimp to create a waiting list.
sure, it took me a couple extra hours because I was like, what is going on? This is a bit difficult. Whatever, have I bitten off more than I can chew? Here I'm watching YouTube videos or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, there's a website, there's a waiting list. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you have to move forward. And it's that grit and personality, I think, that you hold on to, that I will figure this out. And if I need to ask someone for help, I can escalate the problem. If I'm hitting a wall, for example, I can ask for help. But when it comes to using technology, I think it's incredible. All these solutions you have on your laptop that you as a founder can do are pretty crazy and pretty impressive. So you can get very far without needing to hire a tech person. And obviously, I'm not saying that hiring people is not valuable, but as someone like me, who is not earning a salary, who's now living on my savings, who is just trying to validate a venture, I need to prioritize. I need to be really smart with the capital I've got. And the capital I do have will be used to build the product. Once I know what my product brief is, that's where the Delta is going to come in, and they're going to build me my low code solution. So that's how I'll do V1. But there's a lot of foundational things I can figure out on my own that I think don't need to use external capital and can be done on the cheap with a bit of extra time and a bit of grit to teach yourself.
Yeah, no, it's really crazy how, especially nowadays, you could literally do anything with just AI, and everything that people in the past would be able to do, you can do it now yourself, just by using apps, like you said, MailChimp, Frama to build your website. Especially websites are one of the things that, kind of stop people from starting their thing, because you kind of need to have a website first. And I really like the idea of what you said about exchanging skills, instead of sort of like capital or monetary exchange or anything. So that skills exchanging idea is it's really good. How would you describe KLEO Health? What does that do? Is it an app? Is it
KLEO Health is going to be a companion or your assistant in healthcare. So the problem that I'm ultimately looking to solve is that 90% of women know that they should be going for yearly routine checkups with their doctor and yearly screenings. But 40% of women tend to delay or prevent actually getting them done. They forget to book. They feel completely overwhelmed with work. They aren't sure what they should be doing is a huge theme. Like, I'm actually not sure what screenings I need to book, so I don't end up booking them. So KLEO will then be your well-being companion, where you put in your age, your predispositions, any family history, and it'll then give you a routine for the year as to say, okay, Anna, here are the 5 appointments you need to do this year. Here's some education on why it matters. And then I'm going to enable you and empower you to make the booking. And if you don't do the booking, I'm going to nudge you to make sure you get it done. So essentially, it's like they're making sure you go to your doctor's appointments, and we're starting off focusing on women, and it will be available to men in the future as well as children, etc. But just starting with a niche market that I know have the problem that I'm looking to solve.
Nice. Okay, so it's sort of like a subscription-based platform.
Exactly. And it should be an app, because as we all know, like, if you want a companion, you need something that integrates into your day-to-day life, picks up your calendar, and is something that can prompt you, right? So that's the reason I'm thinking a low-code application would be the best V1 in order to create that experience for my customer.
Yeah, I want to go back to the experience, because you said there was something that happened to you, personally, with gender-based violence in the past, and how you've used that, not as an excuse, but as a, how can I say, something to propel you in a good direction, so to speak. What would your advice be to people who have been through certain, situations that were not favorable, to sort of change that for the better and to help people in the end?
I think for myself, it's really about turning pain into power. And for me, I think a lot of gender-based violence, particularly, or any problems we typically experience, say it's depression, anxiety, something happening in your family, I think there's a lot of embarrassment and shame that we tend to feel around, like, our weaknesses or things that have happened to us where we made poor decisions, for example, or we ended up in situations that were just terrible and hurt us. And I think there's obviously a lot of pain, and, you're going to carry that throughout your life.
But for me, it's about seeing myself in a more like powerful position as a survivor. So, you've got to change your mindset in relation to whatever you went through. What did you learn from it? How do you learn perhaps resilience as a person? I would say that's a big thing. It's not directly related to what I went through, but I now know I'm a very resilient person. I can get through anything if I set my mind to it. I might have hard days, but I can do it. So when I approach something like this, startup, I believe in myself and I know that I can do it. So I think, for other people, it's just important to know that, like, if you've overcome something in the past, it doesn't define you. You don't have to be ashamed about it. I think speaking about things can be so much better for the next person who's ashamed about being perhaps a survivor or is really hurt still. We can inspire other people, but we can also inspire ourselves over and over again to know that we can do anything we set our minds to. And so I think you can use it as that fuel on the days that are hard or whatever it is, use that to fuel what you're trying to do.
Okay, so we kind of went through the entire trajectory of a startup at this point, and you've mentioned that you've been in a venture capital, environment. So you've obviously come across, a lot of different startups, their pitches, where they fall short and, where they excelled. What would you advise, someone that has a startup at this point that would be attractive to like a venture capitalist?
Oh, there's a lot of factors that go into, I think, a great startup. So maybe let me like try whittle it down. So I think the first thing, as like someone who's starting a new venture, as we spoke about the problem, be really passionate about the problem. I think who that investor is actually investing in is you and your passion for the problem, especially when we don't know if it's going to work. So you really have to pick a problem that you genuinely care about. You can't fake passion. You can't fake that you really care about the type of user you would have, because you're going to need that passion for the next 10, 15 years even, to make sure you solve that and you stay the course. And that really matters. So I think make sure whatever you're sharing with that investor encapsulates how passionate you are about that problem, because it's going to be a really big indicator of if they believe that you are the right founder for the right problem and the right solution. So they care very much about that. The second thing is your founder origin story. So we spoke about how I went about finding the problem that I cared about. And something I didn't share is actually that both of my parents are doctors and they were my companions in managing my health. So I've experienced how good it feels to actually have someone on standby that I can call and say, what screening should I do this year? What doctor do I need to go to? And it's something I took for granted, but it's quite beautiful that the thing I'm now doing is literally recreating the relationship I ultimately had with my parents in the product, and allowing more women to feel comfortable and empowered with their medical knowledge and about their bodies. And I think that narrative and your origin story of like, how did you discover the problem, is a very important story to tell. And that would be the second thing I would say. That's very, very important. And then the third thing, which is a framework that I'd like to share from my venture building experience, is validating that people care enough about the problem to pay to solve it. So validation is essentially running a lot of tests to see if I give someone this product, would they actually want to buy it? And there are different like elements of validation. So ultimately think of it like a snowball going down a hill. You have this problem, you then say, okay, so what I did, I'll give you an example. I did a survey with 100 different people across South Africa, Europe, and the US. And that's how I learned that 90% of people don't know what screenings they should go for every year. So I got confident that I knew it was a big enough problem now to solve. It was a global problem. And then I got these different insights about how they manage their health in the survey. And based on the survey, that's how I created my website. And my website was then this like MVP saying, I've thought of a solution. What do you think of this product? And then I went to two women and I said, here's the product. Would you pay me for this? If I could deliver what I'm saying I can do here, would you pay me for this? I then built that product on Figma. And then on Figma, I literally had like it's like a clickable prototype essentially.
Yeah.
My dad helped me with all the medical information. So he verified and stamped that this is right for someone. I did a quiz with the women, with each of them, and I put together their own personalized story of the screenings they need to do per year. And I helped them basically set up their health for the year, and they paid me for it. So as you go along your journey of finding this problem and having a customer that you think, or an ICP of, I think, women 30 to 34, this income bracket, etc., with these traits of being interested in health, health conscious, perhaps would be interested in paying for it. You have to start testing and proving that your theories are real and true. That matters a lot in these early stages, because if I went, for example, day one, 6 months ago, and I went and built a product for 500,000 Rand, I would have built the completely incorrect product, because I would have assumed that this is what my customer wants.
Yeah.
By doing little incremental moves along the journey and being able to explain that to your investor, that shows confidence. It shows that it's not your opinion of, I just think everyone would buy this product. It's saying, look, I went and I tested and I tested and I tested. And now that I am building the product and asking for your investment to help me build the product or help me grow my team in order to work on the product, it's like she's done a lot of work, and she's proven that this is a good idea, and she's proven that there's a market for it, that people would be willing to pay for it. So that validation is probably the biggest thing that most early stage founders get wrong, who don't have the frameworks from like a venture builder, or who haven't founded a venture before. And I think if you can get that right, you'll save yourself a lot of wasted time and a lot of wasting money on building things that no one wants, which is obviously the biggest risk of everything when you start a new business.
Nice. Okay. So I like the part about, so you mentioned Figma. So that's basically sort of like a prototype building platform, right? I think, I'm not sure where I've heard, but someone mentioned that before building something, it's better to sort of build in increments, like you mentioned. You build a little bit of it and then you test it if people actually want it, because you don't want to end up with having something completely done, based on your assumptions. And then by the time you bring it to the market, people don't necessarily like it, or there's obviously going to be changes people would want to put depending on the way they use the app. And to change it from that phase where it's completely built, it's a bit difficult, as in to take it by little increments. There's obviously a lot of obstacles in starting a startup. What were a few that you experienced when you were starting KLEO? I think you've mentioned a few now, but are there any major obstacles that you thought this was too much to handle, but eventually you managed?
I think, at every turn, everything is challenging. So right now, for example, we are doing these user interviews. So we ran another survey recently, which was like a pre-screener survey, now focused on women who have experienced burnout, who are planning their healthcare, and who are passionate about health and wellness, and are a certain age and location. So we whittled down the previous survey to now a much smaller segment, and we are asking these women to give us their time by interviewing them for a 45-minute like Zoom interview to gain customer insights. And typically, when you do this in a corporate environment, or when you do this in a paid format, you actually pay participants. So there are whole companies dedicated to recruiting participants, where they say, we're going to give you like 1,000 Rand, Anna, if you answer this interview and you hop on the Zoom call. As an early stage startup, you don't have the luxury of money just all the time. Let me pay 18 people 18,000 Rand later, or more. So you're asking for a lot of favors a lot of the time. And I think you have to just stay confident that like you need to push through. So for example, we sent out like 16 requests for interviews. We're sitting on about like 8 interviews now that are booked. And it's hard to get people to do things for free, right? So you're not offering them, they are basically saying they will help us and give us their valuable time. And, it's just about like, then send a follow-up email, when you think someone is, maybe they're not going to reply at all, give them a few days, send another email. you didn't never know what's going to happen as you embark on this journey. For example, you would assume people will respond to the email and say, I thought I had enough time, but I don't, sorry. People will just ghost you, for example. You might have to add new participants to your list to then go after them to get your 16 participants. It's just about, no matter what problem you encounter, like that you see in any situation you're in, you just have to be really good at problem solving. So you've got to not like freak out when you hit a little barrier of, oh no, only 8 people have booked, but I wanted to interview like 16. Okay, how am I gonna prompt people? What am I gonna do? And I think I've had that literally every day. There's a new blocker as to why I could not go forward, or why I could say, oh, I'm not quite at that goal I want to have. But if you just stay like resilient to say, I still have this goal, then maybe I need to send out even more emails to more people. I need to recruit more participants. That's what I'm going to need to do. So whatever you do, stay the course. I think if you keep trying to solve the problem and you keep moving forward and you're 1% better every single day, you will get there. Your only risk is not doing anything at all when it comes to these early stage startups. So even if you're like, this is not the best version of what I wanted to do, it's a version. Let's move to the next step. Nothing needs to be perfect. You just have to move forward.
Yeah, nice. Just a quick one. When you say surveying, I know a lot of people hate surveys because especially in WhatsApp, you would see, a survey and most people just ignore them. Where do you get people, potential people, let's say? Is it LinkedIn, Facebook? For instance, people that do not have sort of like a huge following, you can't just post on your social media. No one's going to respond to it. Where do you typically get people to survey?
So diversify where you're looking for them, right? So I started off by posting it on LinkedIn and seeing would people organically click on it. I made sure that there was branding there that said, this is for KLEO Health. This is what the survey is about. Are you passionate about like health and well-being? Do you want your insights to contribute to building a new innovative product? So you got to get people excited about it. You're going to be like, this is not just some random survey. It's not just one survey. This is like a life-changing survey for a business that's going to create an amazing solution based on your meaningful insights. So I think as the founder, you've got to like have that enthusiasm to get other people on board. The whole time you're building your venture, you're on a train and you're trying to get investors on board. You're trying to get customers on board. You're trying to get people to believe in you. You're trying to get people to join your team that, want to actually work with you, for example. So the whole time you need to be like keen and like stoked about what you're building. And I think that really attracts the right people in. Once I'd done it, obviously posting it on LinkedIn, I sent it to people directly as well. So I identified in my LinkedIn chats, I actually went and I searched for people living in the US who are this age. And I went and I sent a personalized message to every single person. And I mean, I sent like 25 messages. So I obviously have built a network over the years. It doesn't mean that I know all these people individually. So some people I was like, hey, like, we haven't chatted before. This is currently what I'm up to. I would really appreciate if you would fill in this survey for me. And if you are keen for a Zoom interview, if you could leave your, email address, that would be great. You can only ask and put the message out there and obviously see what comes back to you. So half those people, they didn't reply. It wasn't important to them. They didn't do anything. Then I went on to WhatsApp and I also sent it to people where, relevant. So I think it's about just diversify, look how many people are responding. This is how I literally got 100 people the first time and 50 people the second time. So it really shows that it's just about like putting yourself out there and asking for that help from people. Like, don't be afraid to say like, can you help me out here? You'd be amazed at how many people are willing to help. But also in the future, I'm always like, when you need something, let me know. I'm here for you. If you need me to do a survey, if you need an introduction to someone in my network, it goes both ways. So I think use it to your advantage as well when you are asking for favors.
Yeah, nice. Okay, there's one more thing I wanted to ask, especially when with startup founders, they sort of prolific readers or information consumers. What is your main source of information? Let's say information consumption. I see you have a lot of books in your background, by the way. So is there like a are you like a reader or do you watch things on YouTube? Where do you mostly get most of your information?
I would say I'm a busybody, so I like to multitask. So I believe in audiobooks or
Okay.
podcasts. So I look for, topics that I'm obviously trying to learn about. I'm currently doing a course that's free from Techstars and Kaufman Fellows on venture, early stage investment deals, because it's the first time I'm going to be fundraising next year. So I'm always curious. I think depending on what problem I'm looking to solve, I'm always looking for more information. So I believe that like the reading side in an audiobook, I can like drive and like listen to the podcast or the audiobook, and just constantly educating yourself. Obviously I've subscribed to a million different mails that come through my inbox, the newsletters,
Yeah.
but I find it quite overwhelming to have that much every morning in your inbox. So I find that just sort of bite-sized content about the things I really care about is most important. And sometimes we start a book and we realize it's not that great, or I'm not that engaged. Don't force yourself to like continue listening to it if you're not absorbing the information. Rather say, you know what, it's actually not that great. I'd rather switch over. So I think a lot of the times we focus so much time on like, I must finish this book because I thought it would be great. But if you're not getting value, rather than switch to something where you are going to get more value, because as a founder, you need to be really focused on like, what is going to help me and my business move forward today and this week. You've got to really use your time wisely and use that time to educate yourself where your gaps might be.
Yeah. I know, most of the time when you ask what your passion is to a startup founder, they would say what the thing they're doing now, obviously it consumes most of your time, always thinking about what to do tomorrow and everything. But do you have anything that, apart from work, that you would say hobbies or stuff like that, stuff that to get your mind off, the work, which is also your passion, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So I think for me, Pilates is something I really enjoy. So like coming back into my own space and trying to separate yourself from the hustle and bustle of everyday life and look after your body and your mind in the best way. So I also, for example, like set daily intentions and write down my gratitude every morning. So these healthy like habits that take me into my own space. I also like to paint. So whenever I'm on holiday, I'll go away for a few days. I pack all my things along because I don't always want to be reading,
Yeah.
while I'm on holiday. If it's all about venture building and whatever, then my brain is on.
Yeah.
So I try to take something along that's like a bit more different and a bit more creative. So I try to tap into everything outside of technology, nature, exercise, things that are taking you away from the problem, because there's a lot of value in, yes, you need to be stuck into the problem. But when you get out there and you go for a walk with a friend and you get a different perspective, you often advance your business actually 10 times quicker because you're
Sure.
getting different perspectives. So I think you often get like analysis paralysis when you only focus on the venture and that's all you care about. So for me, I think balance is really important. And I don't think founders should be murdering themselves, because if you are not in a good, healthy place as a founder, you're not going to make good business decisions. So it's very important that you are filling up your cup, like you say, outside of the office and outside of the one problem that you're really passionate about, because you need to fill up your own cup in order to be able to use that to pour into your own business again.
Yeah, nice, beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I've learned a lot from this conversation. I think I've been taking notes all the way because I think, especially practical advice for me makes a lot more sense, because if you can track the trajectory of someone from point A to point B, it's easier to merge that with your journey currently. You can see, okay, currently I'm struggling with this. I see how this person fixed it here. Maybe I can, use that information to fix my trajectory. And yeah, I think there's a lot of points that can be extremely helpful, especially for like a startup, novice, so to speak. Is there any closing remarks you'd like to give to, any young startup founder?
Mm. Yeah. So maybe two things. The first one is LinkedIn. I think personal branding and building a network will be one of the most valuable things you do for your own growth, for the kind of posts you see on your feed every day, for the people that you can ask for favors or help or advice from the people you're going to be able to hire. really invest some time into knowing who are you as a person, what value do you have to contribute to the LinkedIn community, and building those like networking relationships, because I think no matter where you go in life, it's something you can leverage at any point. And it's like they really say your network is your net worth. I think I only really realized that now that I'm really leveraging my network. And perhaps the second thing is that, anyone can be a founder if it's something you want to do. And I think, sometimes it feels like this very big and scary move, which I always thought to be like leaving full-time employment and doing something creative and innovative. But if it is truly something that you are passionate about, whether it's a business, whether it's starting an actual startup and trying to solve a complex problem with something new, do what you really enjoy. So like, don't waste your life staying in a mundane job that you don't enjoy or in a career that you don't enjoy. Rather pivot now. So I think find the confidence and the belief in yourself to make those leaps earlier, because I feel like, life is there to be enjoyed and to really spend every day doing what you enjoy. And as soon as you feel that like disconnect with what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, find the bravery, because I'm so happy I did this. I wish I'd almost done it earlier. I wouldn't have known all the things I do now, but I'm having a lot of fun with it. And I think, chase what you really enjoy, because it'll only, I think, work out. I mean, I'll tell you in 2 years' time how exhausted I am, but also how fulfilled I am. And I think that that's such an important thing to look for. When you're in tech and, it's all about the money and the, it's fancy and but like really do what you care about, because I think that's a good life, right? That you'll feel good about and fulfilled with. Yeah.
Nice, beautiful. Yeah, I think you have a good trajectory, and it looks like everything that you placed everything. I can see by the way that you express yourself. It looks like everything is aligned towards the KLEO Health that you're currently doing. And obviously, with startups, it can start as one thing, and then down the line it changes into something else because you're so obsessed with this whole startup thing. And thanks for actually making the time to be on the podcast today. Not sure if there's anything you want to ask me.
Just thank you so much for having me and for sharing that you learned a lot today as well. I hope that they always say there's this notion of pay it forward. So if you think about the mentorship that I've received and the knowledge I've received, I really hope that someone who listens to our podcast is going to be able to also benefit and get just something to take away to improve whatever they were working on right now and give them that burst of motivation. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Anna.